The Cthar Empire was a sight to behold, a magnificent testament to 10 millennia of conquest and technological superiority. Spanning hundreds of star systems across the galaxy, it dominated countless species through absolute military might and technological prowess. The Cthar culture venerated order above all else, enforced through iron discipline and an unwavering belief in the purity of their species. They viewed other races as inherently inferior, worthy only of subjugation or elimination. At the pinnacle of the Cthar military hierarchy stood Grand Admiral Forlag, a veteran commander whose brilliant tactical mind was matched only by his towering arrogance. His career was decorated with countless victories, each reinforcing his belief in Cthar's supremacy and the inferiority of all other species. With his elongated cranium bearing the ceremonial scars of high command and his 6 amber eyes constantly calculating, analyzing, he was the embodiment of Cthar traditional thinking. The Imperial Council had just assigned Forlag a new mission, to pacify a newly discovered region at the edge of Cthar space. Intelligence reports indicated an emerging species called humans was beginning to expand their influence beyond their home system. This minor task was beneath someone of Forlag's stature, but he saw it as an easy opportunity to add another conquest to his illustrious record. Standing on the command bridge of the Invincible, the flagship of the 9th Expeditionary Fleet, Forlag gazed at the tactical display, showing his impressive armada. The fleet consisted of hundreds of the most advanced warships in the Cthar arsenal, planet crackers, dimensional disruptors, consciousness erasers, and swarms of automated hunter-killers. It was enough firepower to subjugate an entire galactic sector, let alone deal with some primitive species that had barely mastered faster-than-light travel a few centuries ago. Grand Admiral, his executive officer, Commander Krell, approached with a data crystal. The final intelligence report on the humans. Forlag took the crystal between his long, segmented fingers and inserted it into his neural interface. Information flooded his mind. Images of Earth and its colonies, technical specifications of human warships, cultural analyses, and strategic assessments. Fascinating, he mumbled. They've achieved interstellar capability in just a few centuries. Quite impressive for such short-lived creatures. Do they pose any significant threat, Grand Admiral? Asked Krell. Forlag laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. Their most advanced weapons are primitive fusion devices and rudimentary particle beams. Their ships are slow, their shields weak. The most advanced human vessels would struggle against our scout ships. He closed the intelligence file with a dismissive gesture. This will be a simple operation. We'll make first contact at their frontier system, demonstrate our power, and they'll submit. If not, we'll make an example of their frontier worlds. Krell nodded obediently, but hesitated. Intelligence suggests they are unusually adaptive and resourceful for a young species. All species fight when cornered, Forlag replied. But none have stood against the Cthar and prevailed. Set course for the human frontier system. Let's introduce ourselves to our soon-to-be subjects. The Invincible's massive engines hummed to life, and one by one, the hundreds of ships in the 9th Fleet formed up and disappeared into the void, confident in their inevitable victory. 2 days later, the Cthar fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, the closest star to humanity's home and one of their first colonies. The system was sparsely developed, with a single habitable world hosting a modest population and several mining operations throughout the asteroid belt. Scan the system. Forlag ordered from his command throne. Multiple human vessels detected, Grand Admiral, reported the sensor officer. Mostly civilian ships, with a small defensive force of approximately 20 military vessels. Forlag's mouth parts formed what passed for a smile in Cthar physiology. Perfect. Deploy the Vanguard. Let's see how they respond to a simple show of force. A squadron of Cthar destroyers moved forward, their sleek, obsidian hulls reflecting the light of Proxima Centauri. The plan was simple. Demonstrate overwhelming firepower by destroying a few uninhabited structures, then demand surrender when the humans realized resistance was futile. The destroyers approached the colony's outer defense perimeter, weapons charged. Without warning, several small human vessels detached from the main group and moved to intercept. The humans are deploying defensive units, Krell observed. They appear to be Corvette-class vessels. Minimal armament according to our intelligence. Proceed as planned, Forlag ordered. Target their orbital installations. Once they understand our power, they'll withdraw. The Cthar destroyers fired their primary weapons. Coherent streams of exotic particles that should have sliced through human defenses like a blade through flesh. But something unexpected happened. The human ships executed a series of erratic, unpredictable maneuvers, evading most of the Cthar fire with surprising agility. Impossible, muttered the weapons officer. Their reaction times exceed our targeting predictions. Then the human ships fired back. What appear to be simple projectile weapons suddenly accelerated to relativistic speeds, impacting the Cthar destroyers with devastating force. 2 destroyers reported severe hull breaches, and a third lost all power to its propulsion systems. The bridge of the Invincible fell silent as the tactical display updated, showing significant damage to ships that should have easily outmatched their opponents. Forlag's eyes narrowed to slits. They're using some form of mass driver we didn't detect. Clever, but cleverness won't save them. He stood from his command throne. Deploy the main battle group. I want those human ships destroyed. Now, the order was given, and 30 Cthar cruisers moved into attack formation, supported by swarms of fighter craft. This was no longer a demonstration. It was a punitive action. The cruisers unleashed their full arsenal. Plasma lances, gravitational distortion beams, and antimatter torpedoes against the human defenders. The battle that followed shocked the Cthar commanders. Though outnumbered and ostensibly outgunned, the human vessels displayed combat tactics that bordered on the chaotic. They used the system's asteroid field to set ambushes, deployed sophisticated electronic warfare that temporarily blinded Cthar sensors, and launched waves of autonomous drone ships that sacrificed themselves to absorb Cthar fire. Hours later, the skirmish ended. The human defense force was indeed destroyed, but at a cost that left the Cthar officers stunned. 7 cruisers lost, 12 severely damaged, and hundreds of fighter craft destroyed. On the Invincible's bridge, Forlag reviewed the battle data with growing concern. Their weapons technology is more advanced than our intelligence suggested. And their tactics? He paused, searching for the right word. Unpredictable. They fight without proper formation or doctrine. Perhaps they acquired their technology from another species? Krell suggested. The efficiency of their kinetic weapons and electronic countermeasures seems beyond their development stage. Perhaps, Forlag conceded. Or perhaps our intelligence was flawed. He stared at the tactical display showing the debris field of both human and Cthar ships. This was meant to be a simple demonstration, yet we've suffered casualties that would be unacceptable in a major campaign. A communications officer interrupted. Grand Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony. Put it through, Forlag ordered, curious what plea for mercy the humans would offer. A human face appeared on the screen, hairless except for a small patch above the eyes and on top of the head, skin pale, eyes dark. The human wore what appeared to be a military uniform. This is Captain Thomas Reynolds of the Earth System Defense Force, the human said, voice remarkably calm given the circumstances. You have entered sovereign human territory and engaged in unprovoked hostilities against our forces. Forlag leaned forward. I am Grand Admiral Forlag of the Cthar Empire. Your defensive fleet has been destroyed. Surrender your colony, or we will reduce it to ash. The human showed no fear. Grand Admiral, I strongly advise you to withdraw your forces from this system immediately. This engagement was unfortunate and unnecessary. We have no desire for conflict with the Cthar, but we will defend our territory. Forlag was taken aback by the human's audacity. You advise me? Your forces are destroyed. Your colony lies defenseless before the might of the Cthar Empire. With respect, Admiral, Reynolds replied, what you encountered was merely a local defensive patrol. This was not a representative engagement. For both our sakes, I suggest you depart and pursue diplomatic channels. Further aggression will be met with a proportional response. Forlag's anger flared. You dare threaten the Ninth Fleet? Your species has existed for a mere moment in cosmic time. The Cthar Empire has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We will not be dictated terms by primitives. He cut the transmission with a slashing gesture. Prepare the fleet for immediate transit to the human home system. This species needs to learn its place in the galaxy. We will bypass these frontier worlds and strike directly at their heart. Grand Admiral, Krell cautioned, perhaps we should reconsider. Their resistance was stronger than anticipated. We should request reinforcements and admit to Imperial command that I was stalled by a handful of human ships. Forlag snarled. No, the Ninth Fleet has never failed in its mission, and it will not fail now. The losses we suffered were due to complacency and surprise. Now we know their capabilities, and we will crush them accordingly. Krell bowed his head. As you command, Grand Admiral. The damaged Cthar ships were left behind for later recovery, and the remaining fleet, still an overwhelming force by any standard, prepared for the jump to humanity's home system. Forlag studied the intelligence data on Earth and its defenses with renewed focus. The humans had surprised him once. He would not allow it to happen again. The journey to Sol took 3 days in hyperspace. Forlag used the time to analyze the battle data from Proxima Centauri in excruciating detail. The more he studied, the more his concern grew. The human ships had demonstrated technologies that, while not individually superior to Cthar equivalents, were employed in innovative ways he'd never encountered in centuries of warfare. Their electronic warfare capabilities had temporarily blinded advanced Cthar sensors. Their kinetic weapons, simple in concept but devastatingly effective, had penetrated shields calibrated to stop energy weapons. Most disturbing were the suicide drones, which had sacrificed themselves with precision to protect their larger ships. They fight like no species we've encountered, Forlag admitted to his war council. Without honor or proper military doctrine, they use deception and sacrifice as primary tactics, not last resorts. Their psychological profile suggests they value individual lives, noted the fleet's xenopsychologist. Yet they employ suicide tactics with their drones. Curious. The drones are unmanned, Krell pointed out. They value their lives, but not their machines. Forlag clicked his mandibles in thought. It makes them unpredictable. But unpredictability is not enough against our superior firepower and numbers. We will adapt our tactics accordingly. The Ninth Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, beyond the orbit of a small dwarf planet the humans called Pluto. Immediate sensor sweeps revealed a system teeming with human activity, orbital habitats, mining operations, and transportation networks connecting Earth to colonies on Mars, Venus, and several moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Impressive development for their technological age, Krell observed. They've established a significant presence throughout their home system. And significant defenses, added the sensor officer. We're detecting multiple orbital platforms around Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. Weapon signatures consistent with what we encountered at Proxima Centauri, but more powerful. There also appears to be a defensive fleet gathered near Earth's moon. Forlag studied the tactical display. How many ships in their defensive fleet? Approximately 200 vessels of various classes, Grand Admiral. Significantly more than we encountered at Proxima Centauri, but still no match for our remaining forces. Forlag nodded. They've consolidated their defenses around their homeworld, as expected. Set course for the asteroid belt. We'll use it as cover while we perform more detailed scans of their defensive capabilities. As the Cthar fleet moved into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, they began more comprehensive scans of the human defenses. The results were concerning. The orbital platforms appeared to be equipped with the same highly effective kinetic weapons they'd encountered before, but larger and presumably more powerful. The human fleet, while smaller than the Cthar Armada, showed energy signatures that didn't match their intelligence profiles. Grand Admiral, the sensor officer called out, were detecting anomalous readings throughout the asteroid belt. There appeared to be structures embedded within many of the larger asteroids. What kind of structures? Forlak demanded. Unknown, sir. They're shielded from our sensors, but they're definitely artificial and... The officer never finished his sentence. Without warning, dozens of asteroids throughout the belt suddenly changed course, accelerating toward the Cathar fleet. At the same time, smaller objects, previously hidden by sensor-absorbing materials, activated and began emitting powerful jamming signals. Evasive maneuvers. Forlak shouted. All ships, defensive formation. The Cathar fleet scrambled to avoid the oncoming asteroids, but it was too late for many. The asteroids, now revealed to be massive kinetic weapons guided by hidden thrusters, slammed into Cathar vessels with devastating force. No energy shields, no matter how advanced, could fully absorb the momentum of a mountain-sized rock moving at significant velocity. Simultaneously, the jamming devices activated in a carefully orchestrated sequence, creating a cascading wave of sensor blindness that swept through the Cathar. Formation. Ships lost contact with each other, automated defense systems faltered without targeting data, and confusion reigned. From hidden bays within larger asteroids, swarms of human unmanned combat vehicles emerged. Thousands of them, each smaller than a Cathar fighter but armed with the same devastating kinetic weapons. They swarmed the larger Cathar vessels like insects, targeting engines, weapon emplacements, and sensor arrays with precision strikes. "This is a trap," Krell shouted over the chaos. "They knew we were coming." Forlag gripped the arms of his command throne as the Invincible shuddered under multiple impacts. "All ships push through to Earth. We must engage their main fleet before we lose more vessels to these cowardly tactics." The surviving ships of the Ninth Fleet, now reduced by nearly a third, fought their way out of the asteroid belt and accelerated toward Earth. As they approached Mars, they encountered another surprise, a series of orbital defense platforms that had been hidden on the far side of the planet, equipped with weapons that fired weird, pulsing energy beams that seemed to temporarily bend space around Cathar's ships, causing catastrophic structural failures. "What are these weapons?" Forlak demanded. "Nothing in our intelligence suggested they possessed such technology." The Cathar fleet pushed forward, destroying many of the platforms, but losing more ships in the process. By the time they approached Earth's orbit, the once mighty Ninth Fleet had been reduced to less than half its original strength. As the battered Cathar armada approached Earth's moon, the communications officer reported, "Grand Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Earth." Forlag, his composure cracking, nodded. "Display it." The screen showed an older human, wearing a different uniform than the captain they'd encountered at Proxima Centauri. More elaborate, with many symbols that presumably denoted high rank. "Grand Admiral Forlag," the human said, "I am Admiral Helena Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. You have invaded sovereign human territory and engaged in hostilities against our system defense force. This is your final opportunity to withdraw your remaining vessels and avoid further bloodshed." Forlak laukit bitterly. "Admiral Chun, you have fought well for a primitive species. Your traps and ambushes have cost us dearly. But the Cathar Empire does not retreat. We still outnumber your defensive fleet. Surrender your planet, and we may spare your population from total extermination." Admiral Chin's expression remained impassive. "Grand Admiral, I must correct a misunderstanding. The forces you have engaged thus far are merely our system defense force, primarily reservists and local defense units. You have not yet encountered the regular fleet." Forlag's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You expect me to believe your main fleet is elsewhere? This is a transparent attempt at psychological warfare." "I assure you, it is not," Chin replied calmly. "The SDF's role is system defense and delay operations against invasion forces. The regular fleet handles offensive operations and is our primary combat force. They are currently returning from exercises beyond Neptune. I strongly advise you to withdraw before their arrival." Forlag cut the transmission, rage building in his thorax. "Lies. They seek to undermine our resolve with falsehoods about hidden forces. All ships, battle formation. We will break through to Earth, and in this now. The remaining Cthar ships formed up and accelerated toward the human defense fleet stationed near Earth's moon. The two forces clashed in a furious exchange of fire. Cthar energy weapons against human kinetic projectiles and their strange space-warping weapons. The battle was fierce but evenly matched. The human ships, though fewer in number, employed the same unpredictable tactics they'd seen before, using Earth's moon for cover, coordinating with lunar defense batteries, and deploying electronic warfare that continued to confound Cthar targeting systems. An hour into the engagement, with both sides sustaining heavy losses, the sensor officer called out in alarm. Grand Admiral, multiple hyperspace signatures detected beyond lunar orbit. Large fleet emerging. Forlag turned to the tactical display in disbelief. Emerging from multiple points around Earth's orbit was another human fleet, far larger than the force they were currently engaging. These ships were different, larger, more streamlined, with unfamiliar configurations that suggested different design philosophies entirely. Impossible, he whispered. They couldn't have hidden a fleet of this size. They didn't hide it, Krell said, his voice hollow. They said it was returning from exercises beyond Neptune. We didn't believe them. The new human fleet moved with practiced precision, splitting into multiple battle groups that quickly surrounded the remaining Cthar forces. Their weapons were even more advanced than those they'd faced so far. Beams that phased through Cthar shields, as if they weren't there, missiles that split into thousands of submunitions that tracked individual targets with uncanny accuracy, and defense systems that seemed to predict Cthar fire before it was even launched. Unlike the previous engagements, where humans had focused on destroying Cthar vessels, this new fleet employed different tactics. They systematically targeted propulsion systems, weapons, and life support, deliberately crippling rather than destroying the Cthar ships. It was a display of absolute battlefield control that Forlag had never witnessed in all his centuries of warfare. On the Invincible's bridge, chaos reigned as systems failed one by one. The main reactor was offline, weapons disabled, and life support functioning on emergency power. Forlag, for the first time in his distinguished career, faced the prospect of total defeat. Grand Admiral, Krell said quietly, "We are being hailed again." The screen activated to show Admiral Chun once more. Grand Admiral Forlag, this is Admiral Chun. As you can see, you are now facing the United Earth Defense Force regular fleet. Your ships have been disabled rather than destroyed as a demonstration of our capabilities and our preference for avoiding unnecessary loss of life. I now formally request your surrender. Forlag, his proud posture now slumped, stared at the human admiral. This fleet, it is truly your main combat force. It is one of our fleets, yes, Chun replied. The second fleet, specifically, which was closest to your position. The first and third fleets are currently deployed elsewhere. The implication struck Forlag like a physical blow. The Cthar Empire, with its 10,000 years of military supremacy, had just sent a major expeditionary fleet against what amounted to a frontier defense force and reservists, and had been utterly defeated. I require assurances for the safety of my remaining crews if we surrender, Forlag said, the words bitter in his mouth. You will be treated in accordance with interstellar conventions on prisoners of war, Chun assured him. Your wounded will receive medical attention, and all prisoners will be afforded dignified treatment. Forlag looked around at his shattered bridge, at the officers who had served him faithfully, now looking to him for salvation rather than victory. The Ninth Fleet of the Cthar Empire surrenders to the United Earth Defense Force, he said formally, each word painful to utter. As the transmission ended, Commander Krell approached his defeated admiral. What will become of the Empire when they learn of this? Forlag stared at the tactical display, showing the overwhelming human fleet surrounding his crippled ships. Everything will change, Commander. The Cthar Empire has ruled through fear and the belief in our technological superiority. Both have just been shattered. The news of the Ninth Fleet's devastating defeat reached the Cthar homeworld 3 days later. The initial reports were met with disbelief, then shock, and finally dread as the full tactical data from the Invincible's recorders was analyzed. Emperor Kha'Zix, the 97th ruler of the Cathar lineage, convened an emergency session of the Imperial High Council in the ancient Obsidian Citadel. The massive chamber, with its towering crystal columns and hovering council platforms, had witnessed 10 millennia of Cathar triumph and expansion. Today it witnessed something entirely new: existential fear. This cannot be. Supreme General Vex'ahlia slammed her armored fist on the black metal of her platform. Grand Admiral Forlag must have been incompetent. No primitive species could defeat a full Cathar expeditionary fleet. The tactical data is unambiguous, countered High Scientist Morzeth, his voice calm but strained. The human defenses employed technologies we have never encountered. Their spatial distortion weapons alone represent a theoretical framework centuries beyond what our intelligence suggested they possessed. Emperor Kha'Zix raised a clawed hand for silence. Unlike his military and scientific advisors, who wore elaborate armor or robes of office, the emperor dressed simply in a form-fitting bodysuit that accentuated his elongated, insectoid physiology. Power, for a Cathar emperor, required no external symbols. "We face a threat unlike any in our history," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. Not since the ancient war with the void hegemony has the Empire confronted a species with the potential to match our power. The question before this council is simple: how do we respond? Supreme General Vex'ahlia's answer was immediate. We must retaliate with overwhelming force. Assemble the Grand Fleet, deploy the Sun Eaters, unleash the Singularity Cannons. We will reduce their worlds to cosmic dust. And if they have defenses against even these weapons, asked Morzeth. The humans hid their true capabilities from our intelligence operations. Who knows what other technologies they possess? We could be walking into an even greater disaster. Are you suggesting the mighty Cathar Empire should cower before these upstarts? Vex'ahlia sneered. I am suggesting, Morzeth replied carefully, that we must understand our enemy before we commit to a war that could potentially end our 10,000-year reign. The debate raged for hours, with military commanders demanding immediate retaliation while scientists and strategists urged caution. Throughout it all, Emperor Kha'Zix listened silently, his compound eyes unreadable. Finally, the Emperor spoke again, bringing Grand Admiral Forlag's full report. A side door opened, and a Cathar officer entered, bearing a data crystal. This was not Forlag himself. He remained a prisoner of the humans, but his second-in-command who had been exchanged as part of initial diplomatic contact. Commander Krell, the Emperor acknowledged. You witnessed the defeat of the Ninth Fleet firsthand. Tell this council what you observed about the humans, not just their technology, but their nature as adversaries. Krell bowed deeply. Majesty, honorable council, what I witnessed was humbling. The humans fight like no species we have encountered. They are adaptive, innovative, and seemingly without fear. They employ tactics that would be considered dishonorable by our standards. Ambushes, electronic deception, suicide drones. Yet they execute these tactics with precision and efficacy. He paused, mandibles working nervously. Most disturbing was their restraint. When their main fleet engaged us, they could have annihilated our remaining forces. Instead, they deliberately disabled our ships while minimizing casualties. This suggests either a moral framework that values life even of their enemies, or a strategic calculus that saw more benefit in capturing our technology and personnel than destroying them. Either possibility is concerning. And their capabilities? The Emperor pressed. Greater than we could have imagined, Majesty. What we faced in the Sol system, what Grand Admiral Forlag believed was their full military might, was revealed to be merely a fraction of their forces. According to the information provided during my debriefing as a repatriated prisoner, the human regular fleet that defeated us was one of 3 such fleets. And more concerning, they claim to be only one of several advanced species in what they call the Orion Cooperative. This revelation sent a shock through the council chamber. The Kthar had always operated on the assumption that they were the dominant species in the galaxy, with others existing merely as subjects or irritants to be eliminated. They could be lying, Vexalia suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. To what end? Krell countered. They demonstrated their military superiority convincingly. If anything, revealing the existence of allied species only complicates our assessment of their intentions. Emperor Kha'Zix raised his hand again. I have heard enough. It is clear that we face not merely a military challenge, but an existential one. The humans have already reached out with diplomatic overtures, offering to return our captured personnel and ships in exchange for formal recognition and non-aggression agreements. He stood, his tall, chitinous form casting a long shadow across the council chamber. For the first time in the history of our empire, we will pursue peace not from a position of strength, but from one of necessity. Supreme General Vexalia, you will immediately recall all fleet elements to defensive positions around our core worlds. High Scientist Morzeth, you will establish a new division dedicated to analyzing human technology and developing countermeasures. The Emperor's gaze swept the chamber, and I will personally lead a diplomatic delegation to Earth. We must understand these humans, their strengths, their weaknesses, their culture and intentions. If they truly command the power they claim, the future of our empire may depend not on conquest, but coexistence. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Such a course of action was unprecedented in Kthar history. Yet none dared openly challenge the Emperor's decision. 3 months later, Emperor Kha'Zix stood in the observation lounge of the diplomatic vessel Peaceful Overture, watching as Earth grew larger in the view screen. Unlike military vessels, this ship was designed to project scholarly dignity rather than power. Its hull smooth and silver rather than black and jagged, its interior filled with works of Kthar art and cultural artifacts intended to impress human dignitaries. Commander Krell, now serving as the Emperor's aide, joined him at the viewport. We are being escorted by human vessels, Majesty. They're regular fleet elements. The Emperor observed the human warships flanking their approach. They were beautiful in their own alien way, sleek, curved, with none of the brutal functionality of Kthar design. Like the species that built them, they seemed to embody contradictions, powerful yet restrained, advanced yet accessible. Do you believe they will accept our peace offerings, Commander? Kha'Zix asked. Krell considered the question carefully. The humans are unpredictable, Majesty. During my captivity, I observed both remarkable compassion and terrifying efficiency. They treated our wounded with the same care as their own, yet they dismantled our most advanced systems with casual expertise. He paused. But yes, I believe they will accept peace. They seem to prefer it, even when victory through war is assured. A curious trait for such a capable warrior species, the Emperor mused. Perhaps that is why they are so dangerous, Krell suggested. They do not glorify war as we do, yet they excel at it beyond any species we have encountered. They prepare for war while yearning for peace. It makes them complex adversaries. The Emperor nodded slowly, or potential allies in time. As Earth filled the view screen, a swirl of blue oceans, white clouds, and green-brown continents, Emperor Kha'Zix contemplated the future of his 10,000-year empire. For millennia, the Kthar had defined themselves by conquest and superiority. Now, they would need to find a new identity, one that could accommodate the shocking reality that they were not, perhaps had never been, the apex civilization they believed themselves to be. The diplomatic vessel settled into orbit around Earth, and preparations began for the first formal meeting between Kthar and human leadership. Emperor Kha'Zix reviewed his opening remarks one final time, words that would have been unthinkable just months ago, words of respect, of caution, a mutual interest rather than domination. As he prepared to board the shuttle that would take him to the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, the Emperor recalled Commander Krell's first report after returning from captivity, words that had haunted the Imperial High Council and catalyzed this unprecedented diplomatic mission. The humans defeated our most powerful expeditionary fleet with what they considered a secondary defense force. When I expressed disbelief at the scale of their military, their admiral simply said, "You mean that wasn't their full army?" It was not a taunt or a threat. It was an honest question, as if they could not comprehend how we could have been so mistaken. The emperor straightened his ceremonial robes, adorned not with the traditional symbols of conquest, but with the ancient Cthar glyphs for wisdom and adaptation. The empire had survived for 10 millennia by being the strongest. Perhaps it would survive the next 10 millennia by being the most adaptable. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the blue-green world that had changed everything. With a deep breath that hissed through his spiracles, Emperor Kazik stepped forward to meet humanity on their terms, not as conquerors, but as equals. For the first time in Cthar history, the future was uncertain, and that uncertainty was both terrifying and, in its own way, exhilarating. The age of Cthar dominance had ended. The age of cooperation, or at least coexistence, was about to begin.